oh, you see this thing, Dow and DuPont now want to merge? And they started out, I mean, it's like, if you look at, there's a great piece about this over by Nina Wright, a staff writer for Common Dreams over at commondreams.org. All of these companies became Dow Chemical, right? It's Cerritos, Colorado, Denarel, Carroll, Phytogen, United something or other seeds, Morgan, Mycogen, Illinois Foundation Seeds, Biogenetica, Demijo, Veronelli, Corn Acids. Anyway, it's like year after year after year, they just kept gobbling up companies. Dow did. And then DuPont was doing the same thing. There's a long list of them. And now they want to combine into one kind. It's oligopoly. It's oligopoly. What we are looking at is the continuous development here in the United States of very large companies that serve to keep out competition. The whole idea of mergers and acquisitions is anti-competitive. Now, if you think that you're a capitalist, and odds are if you think you're a capitalist, you're not, because real capitalists are people who put capital at risk. What they do for a living is they invest money and then they make a living off those investments. There's a few thousand, maybe a few tens of thousands of capitalists in the United States, but most of us are not I've never been a capitalist, for example. I've been an entrepreneur. I've not worked for another person or another company since I was in my 20s, and frankly, since I was a teenager, with the exception of working in radio back when I was in my 20s. And 1 year that I worked at RCA because Louise was pregnant and I needed health insurance so that we could have our oldest daughter in the hospital in Livonia in Detroit. But it's like we have started all these businesses, but that's free enterprise. That's not capitalism. I mean, I started most of our business. We started with borrowed money. I started one on my line of credit on my American Express card. This radio show, Louise and I started with our retirement money, and we pretty much blew through most of it in the first couple of years. And then it's kind of slowly added back to it, and we're getting back to where we were. But the point is that these mergers are anti-competitive, and somehow you get these people who claim that they love capitalism and they love the competition and on the right, almost invariably, and they defend these mergers. The last time that our federal government really took serious the Sherman Antitrust Act, the whole point of which, by the way, was to defend competition. The last time was when Richard Nixon broke up AT&T. And that took so many years that it was the Jimmy Carter administration by the time it was done. And when they broke AT&T up into 7 companies, and Lucent Technologies and 6 Baby Bells, as I recall, the stockholder equity actually increased. It was good for stockholders. It produced an explosion of innovation in telephone technology. And keep in mind, this was the 70s and 80s. And, now they've largely reconsolidated. AT&T is once again AT&T. They've got a couple of competitors, but it's an oligopoly. It's not, they got 3 competitors. They got, Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, which is a German company, which was nearly purchased by a Chinese company, as I recall. But it's like we don't honor competition anymore. In fact, what we honor is the crushing of competition, which is what all this merger and acquisition activity is and does. And it does no damn good for the American economy. You get 2 giant companies merging, and what do? They no longer need 2 HR departments, so they fire half the merged companies now. They fire half their employees in the HR department. They don't need 2 bookkeeping departments. They fire half those employees. They don't need 2 sales forces. They fire half those employees. It's amazing. Mergers and acquisitions almost always lead to layoffs. How is that a good thing? I wrote an op-ed back, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years ago. It might be a chapter in one of my books even. But I know we also published it titled In Praise of Inefficiency. And in fact, I know where it was. It was in Unequal Protection, my book Unequal Protection. And I pointed out in there that in India, they had this law that just got struck down in the last decade. And the law was that no corporation or family, no entity could own more than 2 retail stores in the entire country. So 98, 99% of the entire retail sector in India was individually owned. Now that is incredibly inefficient. Every store had to have its own bookkeeper, every store had to have its own manager, every store had to have its own stock person, every store had to have its own salespeople. And it's incredibly inefficient, and it was incredibly good for the economy. Now that they've done away with that, now you see Walmart moving into India. I remember being in Vermont when Walmart moved to Vermont, or actually they had been there, they had just come in about a year, I think maybe 2 years before we moved to Vermont. And to this town down the road, there'd been a huge fight. And, you know, the average Walmart puts about 140 companies out of business. And all those employees. They say, oh, we're big employers, and, you know, the company and states compete with them or for them and give them big tax breaks and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, we all end up getting screwed. And it's not just Walmart. I mean, you know, it's just, you know, right across the retail sector, across the manufacturing sector. In this case, it's the chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the health insurance industry. You've got, you know, health insurance companies merging. We're down to like 5 major ones. This is not competition, and it's not a healthy economy. It's setting us up for the crash, apropos of my book, The Crash of 2016.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here, and please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.